I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Forgotten Oscar Films. And this week we're going to be looking at the class of 1979 movies, a movie that's kind of a musical, kind of a classic 70s musical in a lot of the ways the 70s themes were. We're starting a brand new decade here on Forgotten Oscar Films, and we're starting it off with a bang. Today we're going to be talking about All That Jazz. So, if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is I look at a film that was nominated for Best Picture and one that I've never either heard of or one that hasn't sort of gotten enough love and acclaim. And if you're an Oscar fan, I look down and sort of break down the history and sort of the Oscar landscape at that time to get you a little bit more appreciative about the history of the Oscars and how that sort of portray the future. But then also, I like to give my thoughts and sort of answer a central question as is, why is it maybe being forgotten? Why is it maybe looked down upon? Was it because of the other few films? You know, why is this film maybe not as sort of talked about in the general film conversation than a movie, something like, say, another competitor, another equal at the time, Apocalypse Now. So, for All That Jazz, let's just jump into history right now for the 1979 Oscars. So this is the class of 1979, so the films released in 1979 for the 1980 Oscars. So the five nominees were Kramer vs. Kramer, which ended up winning Best Picture. For me, I didn't cover this one because I'd already seen it. It's a movie that is constantly being shown. I think that actually helps it, and it actually helped its legacy because for me, it's always been on a cable movie. It's always been on TV. Even right now, they're showing it in my local sort of chain of movie theaters here. So I think that it's just a movie for me that was always existed, a movie that was always told to me as a great movie. And with this and last week's episode, which also won Best Picture for Ordinary People, I think it's kind of interesting to see sort of the time the Academy, and in large part because the Academy at this point is largely American, how this sort of American mindset is culturally at this time, specifically with these sort of divorce movies and these sort of family dramas. Something that's very prevalent and topic, and really trying to sort of hammer home this defining kind of, I guess, baby boomer generation. So I didn't cover that for that reason. Another nominee was Apocalypse Now. This is a classic for a reason, an incredible film. One of the most interesting, maybe, film history and film sort of production stories of all time. So check out Apocalypse Now. That's a classic. Didn't want to cover that one. Norma Rae was another nominee. And if I'm being honest, maybe this one was the most forgotten, I would say. But I did cover Sir Sally Field. She, in Places of the Heart episode, that's where she won her second Oscar. This is where she won her first Oscar. And actually, I'd recommend a video from Be Kind Rewind, who does an incredible sort of job at detailing her Oscar run. Sally Field, from sort of a TV actress to sort of this role, and how everyone turned it down, and then Sally finally got the role and sort of embraced it, about sort of a union forming in a smaller manufacturing town. And then another nominee was Breaking Away. And I was very close to picking this one too, because we haven't covered similar ground. But I also decided that, it does, I think, have sort of a bit of a cult status. I think a lot of people, this is their favorite movie. I'm not sure how much I could have contributed to the overall conversation. But actually, the main reason why I chose All That Jazz was a user, a fan user in the community here, George Eret. I believe I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but I apologize. On the Mississippi Burning episode, the very first episode of Forgotten Oscar Films, when I told the community to sort of give me some suggestions, he suggested for 1979 All That Jazz being one of his favorite movies. So I thought, this is a great way to engage the community. Please let me know in the comments down below. Next week is going to be 1978. We're going to be working backwards. So look at the class of Best Picture winners. Maybe there's one that you've never heard of or maybe you've never seen, and you want to recommend it to me. And you think that's sort of the most forgotten one, I've never even heard of it, and then you want to sort of throw it in the comments. Don't do something for 1974 like The Godfather Part 2 or things like that. And I may not necessarily choose your films, but in this case, I thought this was a great example because I had never seen the film, and while I heard a bit about it, I still think that it was a great chance because I hadn't heard so much about it that it would be unrealistic in a lot of ways. But without further ado, let's transition into my thoughts. And before I sort of talk about the film a little more concretely, I want to talk about this in relation to two people. That's the two main stars of the movie. First being the director, Bob Fosse. Now, I don't know Bob Fosse as a director, mainly also because he's only made 5 films. Even though being a prolific director, he's really dominated a lot of the art forms, particularly in the 70s in the States. I always know him as a dance choreographer. In The Birdcage, the Fosse is a thing, it's kind of a dance move that Robin Williams does, and his name's just sort of privy and sort of entered the culture in a lot of ways. But in terms of the man himself, he's a very unique director because he did Sweet Charity, which was nominated for Oscars, and then he does Cabaret, which is another musical that was a huge success, winning 8 Oscars, and then losing Best Picture to The Godfather, so a surprising year. Actually, kind of maybe similar to La La Land in a lot of ways. You could say sort of Bob Fosse and Damien Chazelle's careers are on a sort of similar trajectory, which I don't think they will go there for now, but you can sort of see the way they're going, I guess you could say. They make the one film that sort of gets nominated for a few Oscars and enjoyed. I guess Whiplash won some Oscars, but then they sort of, their second film, well, technically Damien's third film, but the sort of second known film is a big musical that wins all these Oscars, but then doesn't win Best Picture. And then what do they do afterwards? Damien Chazelle makes a sort of an intimate character drama about Neil Armstrong. Obviously, it's an intimate character drama conflicted with space, but then you see Bob Fosse do Lenny, about Lenny Bruce, which is an intimate character drama, but also sort of larger themes about sort of the freedom of speech and things like that. Anyways, I just thought that was a little interesting sort of career aspect to it, but also another guy I want to talk about is Roy Scheider. He's a guy that I always knew as a guy from Jaws, and really in the 70s had this really great run. He had 71 was Clute, 72 was French Connection, 75 was Jaws, 76 was Marathon Man, 77 was Sorcerer, and then 79 All That Jazz. And then you look at a movie like All That Jazz and Jaws, and I really, after this movie, really appreciated Roy Scheider, and he was definitely the standout and the most obvious aspect to it that I could relate to and I could really comment on, because he was really fantastic in this movie. I really think this is sort of and how eccentric and lively he was, and how he totally committed to the character. This is sort of a man who has feminine aspects to him, but he's not gay, and he's not struggling with his sexual identity at all. He's very much himself, but he's still sort of an unarchetypical sort of character. The movie based semi-autobiographically off Bob Fosse and his life, and I always see this sort of movie as Bob Fosse's life, but seen through sort of his lens, which involves sort of fantasy and sort of one-side point of view. And I think that in poorer hands, this film could have been annoyingly self-indulgent, but without a doubt, it is self-indulgent, but I think that's the only way this film could be. As a matter of fact, I think that it almost becomes so self-indulgent that sort of comes all the way around again, and at moments almost feels sort of, you can tell there's a wink and a nudge to it that I sort of enjoy. It's sort of these self-reflexive movies that I've grown up with. That aspect I really enjoyed to it. And then, how like I said at the top, it's a 70s musical, but it's much more darker. It's almost, you can't even call it a musical because there's musical parts at it, but it's really sort of a character drama in a lot of ways, which is, of course, very prevalent. We'll see of the themes of the 70s as we go through. A lot of these sort of big budget studios experimenting with the medium, which we don't see as much today. But with All That Jazz, Roy Scheider understands sort of the tragedy, almost the comedic tragedy in a lot of ways. Like the film says, he doesn't care if he lives or dies. And I think Roy Scheider brings sort of a great charisma and a great sort of eccentricity to it, but also a deep sadness. There's always something behind that facade in a lot of ways. That sort of when the little interspersed cuts where he says it's showtime, folks, and so these morning routine, they'll start to become progressively sadder and sadder. And I think that's sort of really the heart of the film. And you could say, even though I won't spoil the end scene, there's one sort of big end number which really has sort of both the tones of the movie, the sort of the themes of death. I think Bob Fosse is intimately interested in, and sort of a man that is obviously self-destructive, and there's a huge self-destructive nature to it, but also sort of the showbiz side of it. And he takes sort of maybe a little bit more of a cynical view, but the whole idea of showbiz is to be happy and to be lively and to be exciting, and then you contrast that with his life and how he's treating his body and sort of his output. It's sort of a duality in a lot of ways, and a juxtaposition that I really enjoyed. And another huge element that you can't not talk about when we talk about this film is the editing. This film has still a linear editing, but uses editing in such a way to really expand the medium. It's a movie that definitely reminds you that, oh, there's so much you can still do with the medium of film, because this type of editing and style hasn't been employed as much nowadays. Because, like I said, with those It's Showtime folks kind of scenes, these sort of, he intercuts the movie with these sort of rapid cut daily routines, and those daily routine elements sort of show the busy lifestyle he is, but also sort of how empty he is in a lot of ways. There's a real sort of beauty in how that sort of evolves, even though there's sort of this quick succession of movements. Even the way he holds his camera, it's very much, people like the documentary style, including Fosse himself, sort of a cinema verite kind of element, because yes, it's fantasy, yes, it's reality, but I think that while this film is very much through Bob Fosse's lens of himself, you could definitely, you have to sort of understand that, and I think there's some themes going on, and maybe he's not as scathing as some people would want him to be, of such a sort of a controversial figure who did really some terrible things to his wife. In terms of sort of affairs and sort of his mental state, he wasn't a good person, but I think the film realizes that, and is not maybe confronting it directly, but I think confronting it in a unique way that I think if you're smart enough and you get enough from the movie, you'll really understand it and get to the heart of it. But why doesn't this film hold up? Well, or why doesn't it sort of been forgotten? I don't necessarily think it has been forgotten. I think this is definitely a year of Apocalypse Now should have won. Similar to Green Book, similar to last week where Raging Bull should have won, Apocalypse Now is clearly this one that people think should have won. Even it could have even happened with Godfather and Godfather Part 2. This is an incredible, huge film masterpiece, I think, in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people really, really enjoy it. I think some people consider it one of the best movies of all time. So even though all that jazz is a great film, it may not be for everyone, but I still think that needs to be talked about more. And Fosse Verdon is on TV now, so I hope some people are watching that, and then therefore watching Bob Fosse and seeing some of his movies, because he's got some great movies, and he's a very talented director and a really talented artist in all forms of the medium. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure to comment down below. Let me know some of your picks for next week. This week was a user-suggested pick, so please, that would be so much fun. Just engage the community as much as possible. That's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and until next time, stay tuned.